Hey Daydreamers, it's Alex, and today I'm bringing you my top 10 books of 2020. So first of all, I just want to say, sorry I've been a little bit absent lately. I've just been a bit kind of slumpy with my reading, and whenever I get slumpy with my reading, I just get slumpy with content creating. But I'm hopefully back now, and I'm ready to share with you my favourite reads of 2020. So these are not in any particular order, like 10 to 1 or anything, because I've tried to do that and I just couldn't because it was too hard. So I'm just going to show them in the order I grabbed them. The only thing is I will save my absolute favourite book of the year for the end. Other than that, no particular order. Also, some of these I have reviews for on my blog, so for those ones I will leave them linked down below and in the corner. I think that's the right corner. So without further ado, let me get into my list. So the first book on the top of my pile, not in a ranked order, just on the top of my pile, is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I listened to the audiobook of this one and it was just fantastic. It was just such a lovely YA romance, and it is a female-female romance, which was just amazing, and it was just so good. I really, really enjoyed it. The audiobook was really good as well. It was a good narrator. Obviously it features a black main character and the author is also black, so that's Own Voices rep. And this book follows Liz, who just feels like she's too awkward and she wants to try and escape her town by going to a nice college, but she can't afford it. So she runs for prom queen to try and get a scholarship, because prom queen wins a scholarship. And it was just such a good read. I highly recommend all of these books, but you should definitely check this one out, and all of them. The next book is another one that I listened to on audiobook, and that is Love Boat Taipei by Abigail Hing Wen. I may have spoken about this one before on the channel, but I was not expecting to enjoy this one at all. Just the synopsis sounded like something I would really hate, and it was not. It was amazing. I'm going to read you the synopsis because some of these, I read a lot of books in a year and it's been a while. So whenever Wong's parents send her away for the summer, she's expecting to attend a strict educational program in Taiwan. Instead, she finds the infamous Love Boat, a free-for-all where hookups abound, adults turn a blind eye, and the nightlife runs non-stop. Will Love Boat give Eva the courage to pursue the future she dreams of, to become who she wants to be? One thing's for sure, this will be a summer she'll never forget. So based on that, I was kind of expecting it to be a lot more like party and drugs and sex, and I just don't like reading about that kind of stuff. But it wasn't, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. And once again, the audiobook was excellent, so I'd highly recommend this one too. I should stop saying that after each one because, like I say, I obviously highly recommend all of them. Next up, we have Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. I adored this book. It was amazing. I think it was marketed as like the fantasy of 2020, and sometimes books marketed like that and I just enjoy them but don't love them. This one was exceptional. I'm obsessed. I can't wait for the next book. Once again, I'll read you the back. I'm very good at remembering the emotions and the feelings that a book gave me. I'm not so good at remembering the actual details of a story, no matter how much I loved it, which is really annoying. So I'll read you the back. Tarusai has always longed for the warmth of a family. She was raised in isolation by her mysterious, cunning, and often absent mother, known only as the Lady. When Tarusai comes of age, the Lady sends her to the capital of the global empire of Aritsar to be chosen as one of the Crown Prince's Council of 11. If she's picked, she'll be joined with the other council members through the Ray, a bond deeper than blood. But the Lady has other ideas, including a magical wish that Tarusai is compelled to obey. Kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. I loved everything about this. Like, I loved the characters, and I loved the Ray bond. I thought that was such an, like, the way it was done, it was just so fascinating, and I just loved reading about this bond that these 11 people had, or 12. I can't remember if it was 11 or 12 with the Crown Prince. Either way, this bond this group of people had was just amazing to read about, and I just loved it so much. The next one I read right at the start of the year, so long ago, but it really, the way it made me feel and how much I loved it has stuck with me. And that one is Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. This is the arc. This was just great. I loved the romance, but I also loved all the political stuff. I think more YA books need to include stuff like that because young adults do actually care about that stuff. And so it was really great to have that in a book. And the romance was super cute. And it follows these two teens, Jamie and Maya, as they... I don't know a lot about American politics, but I think they went canvassing around their area before an election to see who people were going to vote for. I think. I don't really understand it. But they do that together as they get to know each other, and it was just excellent. Also, on the note of not understanding it, I don't think it took anything away from the book for me that I didn't understand the American politics. I was still able to enjoy it for what it was. So if you don't understand American politics either, don't let that put you off. The next book is actually a book that's like right in the middle of a series. But this year, Beth and I buddy read the Throne of Glass series, and my favourite book in that series ended up being Tower of Dawn. I just really, really, really enjoyed this one. I was so nervous going into it because it's set on a different continent to the rest of the series, and it doesn't follow Selena, unlike the rest of the series, and so I was worried that it would be a completely different vibe and I would hate it, and actually what happened was it was a completely different vibe and I loved it. I loved the continent and the characters it did follow and just everything. It was so good. I think a few people I know were surprised when I said this was my favourite, so I feel like that's not the most popular opinion, but I just loved it so much. I love Kale and Nesrin, and there were like these giant eagle things which were great. Amazing. So yes, I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised by Tower of Dawn. And I'm not going to tell you what it's about because it's like book 6 in the series. So read the series. This next book is one that ended up meaning a lot to me. It was the most relatable book I've ever read, and I definitely feel like I would have benefited from reading it 10 years ago. And that one is Let's Talk About Love by Claire Can. This follows an asexual character, and I've read a few books following asexual characters. Another one I read this year was Loveless by Alice Oseman, which everyone raved about, and I did enjoy that, but it didn't really reflect my experience, which is fine. Like, everyone has different experiences, but that's why that's not on this list, and this one is because it reflected my experience of asexuality phenomenally. Like, the first chapter made me cry because I related to it so much and to that situation, and I don't want to spoil anything, but what happens in the first chapter is basically one of my biggest fears. So I just have so much love for this book, and I just always will, I think. Next, we have a more recent read, and that is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is another arc. It's such a pretty arc. I love this arc so much. I've had this for years, and I've been wanting to wait until the whole series is out to marathon it, which didn't happen because life. But I'm so glad I finally picked it up. A couple of years ago, actually, I did start it and read maybe 50 pages, and I really enjoyed what I read, but I had to put it down to start a readathon, and I never got back to it. And so I'm glad I finally got back to it and finished it, and I loved it so much. I have the next 2 books, and I'm planning on reading them in January. I don't read many fantasy books set in deserts. I think this might even be like the second one I've ever read. So it's not necessarily a vibe I like seek out, but obviously everyone raves about this series. I've heard so many good things, and I'm so glad I finally picked it up, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I can't wait to finally be able to carry on with the series in January. Next up is another book by Sarah J Maas, and that is House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series. I know a lot of people didn't love this, but I just absolutely loved it. I was so hooked and captivated, and it was just brilliant. Last year and this year I've also been getting more into like long, more like older adult fantasy novels as opposed to like the shorter YA fantasy. So I definitely read this one at the right time in my life. I don't think it was too hard to read. Like, I think it's technically adult fantasy, but it wasn't like a super dense adult fantasy that I was just slogging through and it's taking me ages and I was bored and everything. It was so easy to read. Or like, I never got bored. I was able to get through it and I enjoyed my time reading it, and I just really, really enjoyed this. We're now on to the second to last book, and this is another one I listened to on audiobook. I listened to this one in April, I think, and it was while I was isolating because my mum had symptoms of COVID, but this was before all the testing, so we still don't know if she actually had COVID or not, but I had to isolate anyway. And so I listened to this while doing a jigsaw puzzle, and it was a great time, and I really loved the book, and I really loved the audiobook. Anyway, the book is The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. I just thought the audiobook was so good, and I was just so captivated. I would keep stopping doing my jigsaw puzzle just to listen because it was just so good. I'm definitely a big fan of Beth O'Leary's now, and I've only read one of her books. I have The Switch. I just need to read it. I'm going to listen to the audiobook because this one was so excellent. This follows two characters, Tiffy and Leon, who Leon puts out an ad saying he's basically got, like, he wants to share rent on his flat, like have a roommate, and he puts out this ad, but the thing is they sleep in the same bed, and Tiffy obviously responds to the ad and moves in with him, and they sleep in the same bed but at different times because one of them works during the day and one of them works night shifts and isn't around at the weekend, I think. So they never share the bed, but they sleep in the same bed, and they like communicate through post-it notes, and it's so cute. I love this so much. I was surprised by how much I love this as well because I'm not really into adult romance. So this just really took me by surprise and blew me away, and I was so happy I read it. And now we're on to the final book. So this is the only one that was in a set position, and this is my favourite book of the year. Some of you, maybe like 3 of you, like Beth, Blue and Mark, might have guessed what book this is based on the fact that it's not shown up already. That is Chain of Gold, Wexander Clare, obviously. This is the first book in the Last Hours series, which is the newest series that she started in the Shadowhunter world. So this is a sequel series to The Infernal Devices, and it follows the kids of the characters from The Infernal Devices, and it's just so good. I love being back in the Shadowhunter world, but also back in the Shadowhunter world in this era. I love the Infernal Devices is my favourite Shadowhunter series, and so I'm so excited to get back into this sort of pre-modern technology kind of era and back with these characters. I'm just loving it so much. I cannot wait for Chain of Iron next year. I already have 4 copies pre-ordered. I also have 4 copies of this. But yes, I love this so much. So those were my favourite books of 2020. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite books of 2020 were, and if you've read any of my favourite books and what you thought of them. Keep an eye out for Beth's video on Wednesday and Blue's video on Friday, and I should definitely, hopefully, see you next week. I am planning on coming back regularly now, so I'll see you next week.